Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister, representing the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator Gallagher. Minister, I know you've had a pretty tough week, so all I just want is a yes or no to this question, if you can, please. Does the Albanese Labor government acknowledge the existence of Indigenous identity fraud?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. The way the Albanese government deals with indigeneity is a three-part test that has been widely accepted and hasn't changed. We apply the following common law criteria for the purposes of determining eligibility for First Nation-specific services. That a person is—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson.
Point of order. There's no reference to my question. Was only an answer. Do you acknowledge the existence of Indigenous identity fraud?
Yes. Thank you, Senator Hanson. I think the minister's being relevant, and I'll ask her to continue, but I'll continue to listen very carefully. As you know, I can't direct the minister to answer, but I can draw her attention to the question if she's not being relevant. She's just a few seconds into the question. I'll listen carefully, and if she's not relevant, I'll draw her attention to the question. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, because I think this does go to answering the question. So in order to determine eligibility for, or to be eligible for First Nations specific services, a person must be of Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander descent, identifies as an Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander, and is accepted as such by the community in which they live or have previously lived. This is a widely accepted test by government agencies, First Nations organisations and community organisations. It's a common-sense approach. The way it works in law is well established.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
That was not an answer to my question. My second supplementary is, considering the evidence that Indigenous identity fraud exists and evidence has been brought to Minister Linda Burney's attention, what measures has the Albanese Labor government put in place to prevent, identify, investigate and prosecute Indigenous identity fraud?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I'm not across what Senator Hanson alleges that has been provided to Minister Burney, but the approach that we take is a positive approach around how to test eligibility for First Nations services, and if that eligibility criteria isn't met, one of those three, then that eligibility would not be.
Senator Hanson.
I'm not talking about eligibility. My question was, what has been put in place to actually address the issues?
Senator Hanson, if you were raising a point of order, then you need to stand and make the point of order clear. If you were raising a point of order, then the minister is being relevant to your question. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. Well, again, I mean, the eligibility is, as I set out. The government doesn't recognise identity fraud, and I'm sure that Minister Burney is dealing with all of the matters that are raised with her in her role as Minister for Indigenous Australians carefully and competently, as she does with everything.
Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Again, not answered. Considering the evidence that Indigenous identity fraud exists, which has been reported numerous times and in courts, will the Labor senators support my motion to refer this vital matter to an inquiry by the Legal and Constitutional Affairs References Committee or any other committee? Are you prepared to actually address this problem that we have in Australia so that people are actually of Aboriginal and Indigenous background, that they can receive the benefits that many other Australians can't get?
The time for asking the question has expired. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, firstly, no. The answer to the question is no, we will not support. Secondly, we don't recognise identity fraud. Thirdly, I don't believe it's up to an individual in this place to decide who gets to be an Aboriginal person in this country. First Nations people have lived here for over 65,000 years. We should all be really proud of that, as being sharing the same country as the longest continuing civilisation in this country. And the Albanese government's priority, apart from ensuring adequate funding and resources and co-design processes for services to support First Nations Australians, is to ensure that recognition done through constitutional amendment, through a voice to this nation's parliament. That is our priority. We look forward for every Australian having the opportunity to cast a vote on that later this year.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator White.